Hi everyone, my name is Ankit Vashisht and today we will be discussing HTML forms. Okay, so basically, what are HTML forms? HTML forms are basically called by using form tag. Okay, so if we just look here, uh, if we just open any HTML file, then what will happen is that we can use tag. Are you guys able to see my screen? I guess I haven't shared my screen. I guess. Okay. So basically, the the thing is, what we can do is we can just make use of a form tag. Okay. So form tag is kind of defined to have a form in the HTML. Okay. Next next thing is, one second, form elements. Guys, form elements are not just limited to input, label, select, text area, button, field, legend, data list, output, option, or opt group. There are like many. So we will be discussing like some really important ones that are used like every day. So first we have input. So basically input is the most commonly used form tag. So we can have input type text to have a text box. So if we just open it, yeah, hi Nandita. This is me Ankit Vashisht, and so kind of I was discussing HTML forms. Okay, so basically forms are denoted by the tag form slash form. Okay, so basically it is denoted something like this: form tag and slash form tag. Okay, so basically in the form tag we can have multiple form elements like input, we have label, we have select, we have text area, we have button, we have field set, we have legend, we have data list, we have output, we have option, we have opt group, and form elements are not just limited to these. We have like multiple other form elements as well, but these are the ones that are most widely used. Okay, so let's just discuss each and everything one by one. Okay, Nandita, can you hear? Hello. Okay, so yes, so first thing is input type text. So coming towards the input type text, it simply represents the text box. So what is text box? If I open the Jamboard, so I guess you might have very well saw the text boxes in every website. So if you open Tutorix website, then one second, then certainly this is a text box. If you go to the contact us page, then we have text boxes. So to define a text box, we use input type text. So basically input tag defines the text box. It also defines the buttons. So we can have input type button. What will happen is that if we kind of execute this HTML, then uh, in FED we can just go to the HTML, then it has kind of executed a button. So we can kind of use this button, and we can give it some value as well. uh, then we can have like v- value is equals to my button. So basically input type button can also give you a button, then input type text can give you a text box. There are like many input types. So it's a text box now. Okay, so we will be discussing many input type in detail in this class only later. So next form element that we will discuss is label. Label is nothing but just to define a simple label. So it's like label, we can say label student name, and here we have input type text. So now if we just execute this code, we have a label, and in that label we have a text box. So basically label just defines the label. Next is select box. So select box is used as a drop down. Okay, so let's suppose we want a drop down. In the drop down we can have like gender. Okay, in gender we can have options like male or female. So what we can do is we can make a drop down using select box, a tab, a semantic tag called select. In that we can have a semantic tag called option, and in that we can have male, or we can have option female. Now if we kind of execute this, then it will show a drop down for male and female. Okay, Nandita, are you getting it? Okay, next is the text area. Text, one second, someone else is also there. Hi, ABC. What's your real name? Okay, no issues. So we were kind of discussing the text area. So what is text area? Text area in the HTML represents the big text box. So basically text area here is used to write the description. So for example, we can define a text area. um, we can make it a description, and we can have a text area, and here if we execute this code, then we can see a bigger text. Our text area is being shown. The beauty about text area is that we can kind of increase the size of a text area, we can decrease the size of a text area, and we can write whole sort of descriptions. This is a test description, another test description. So basically in the text area we can write descriptions. So this was the text area. Another thing about text area is that if we want some value to automatically come in text area by default, so we can put these values between text area and slash text area. So we can say this is a default description. Now you can see that this is coming by default. Okay. Next comes is the button. Button basically are of two types. Okay. If I open the Jamboard again, then button are basically of two types. One can be normal button, and second can be a submit button. Now, what's the difference between normal button and submit button is that normal button is for just normal processes like calling up a JavaScript or calling up some other functions. Submit button is used to submit a form. So if we have a form and we want to submit that form, for that we use a submit button. So basically, let's suppose there's a form that have a text box and we have a submit button. And what this submit button will do is if we click on the submit button, the value of this form will go to the backend. So this is the use of a submit button, and normal button will call basic things like JavaScript. So how we define both? I'll I- I'll just define both and I'll tell you the functionality as well. So for example, let's have an input type is equals to text. We have a text box, okay, and here we are just putting up a normal button. So the use of normal, so how we define a normal button? There are two ways to define a normal button. One is the button type button, and second is input type is equals to button, and we can give it a value my input button, and here we can give my button. So if we just execute this code, then we we have my button and my input button. So basically, my button and my input button, there are two ways to define a button. Similarly, if we want to define a submit button, then it's like button type is equals to submit. We can have my submit button. Then we have something like we can say input type submit. Sorry, input type is equals to submit, and one second, someone else has joined. Hi Girish. So Girish, we were discussing kind of HTML forms, and we were discussing buttons. So basically, buttons are of two types. One second. Buttons are of two types. One are the normal buttons, one are the submit buttons. Normal buttons are simply used to do normal functionalities like calling up the JavaScript and all. Submit button is used to submit a form. Till now, this is what we have discussed. So basically, to define a normal button, we have two ways like button type button and input type button, or to define the submit button, we have two ways button type submit or input type submit. Value my submit button, So basically, these are the ways we define the normal button and the submit button. So let me just try to show you a functionality of a normal button. So this is our button, and we will call up a JavaScript, a simple JavaScript on call of this button. So let's suppose we have a script, and inside that script we print a simple alert. Hi, this is an alert. Okay. So here what we do is, on click we can define up a function. We can keep it in a JavaScript function. Guys, don't worry about the JavaScript. We will be discussing this in detail in the upcoming classes. My.js. So consider this, that I am telling you a difference between a normal button and the submit button. So we can call up this function. So now if we just look here, then whenever we click this button, it has executed a JavaScript that is kind of loading an alert. So this is the use of a normal button. But if there is a submit button, then we have in button type submit, and here we have a form. So what it will do is, this submit button will now submit the form. One second, we can remove on click. So basically it will submit the form to the backend. So basically if we want a form that should give the data to the backend, we use a submit button. Okay. Next thing that we are discussing is the field set. Field set contains the set of fields. So let's suppose we have a field set by the name students, one field set by the name students, and then we have another field set by the name of employees. So we can define it like this. So what we can do is, we can have a field set by the name. So basically in this field set we can have a label, student name, then we can have an input type text, and here we can have another label by student ID. We can have input type text as well. Then we can have another field set. So this is for the employees. So we can have employee name. Then we have employee ID. So you can see that one field set is created with one border that has like student name, student ID. Then we have another field set, employee name, employee ID. So basically to have like multiple divisions in the form fields, we use field set. So this is the part of one field set, and this is the part of another field set. Okay guys, are you getting? Nandita, Girish? Okay, great. So next is the legend. Legend is basically used for two things. One, it is used for kind of writing the simple note, like we can put up a note using legend. Note, this is note, or at times we are using a graph. So in below graph, we add two legends like this is a date, this is a time, or some two fields like the time, speed. So for these two purposes, we are using legend. Legend is like similar to label only, but what matters is the use case. This is a note. Next is the data list. We can discuss this later. And output also, we can discuss this later. The two things that are important is the option and opt group. So if you remember, we were discussing select box. So basically in the select box we have option. Okay. So l- let's suppose we are taking like a select box for like gender. We can put up a gender. So let's just keep a label gender, and then we can have like two genders, male. So in the select box we can have two options, male, female. So we got the drop down for male and female. Next comes the opt group. So basically if we make up like an opt group, what opt group does is it kind of makes a grouping in the select box. So like if we want that there has to be two groups in the drop down, one is for the mammal and one is for the non mammal. So we can have like opt group name is equals to mammal, and in this we can have two options, male and female. And then we have an opt group. We can keep it like non mammal and we can give it an option no gender. Okay. So if we just do it, then you can see that the the groups are being made, but we cannot see the values. So for this we will be using is one second, that was I opt group. Okay, that will be the label. So basically we will be using label, and here we can just type mammal, and in the label we can type non mammal. So now we can have a group by mammal. It has male, female, non mammal, no gender. It's like opt group, label mammal, opt group, label non mammal. So, this is what it is. Nandita and Girish, did you understood what exactly is opt group? Okay, great. Next is the different we have input types. So earlier I was talking about the input types. So basically, first we have is the input type button. So I guess you guys are now well aware about input type button. What is input type button, and second is the input type submit. Nandita, Girish. Okay, I'll explain it once again. Input type button, value is equals to my button. So if we kind of execute this code, then basically it will load a button. Okay, guys. Next we have is the input type checkbox. So basically what input type checkbox will do, it will load a checkbox. So we can have a checkbox by, let's suppose we can have one checkbox, we can say area, then we can have a checkbox volume, so we can have like multiple checkboxes. So basically input type checkbox loads the checkboxes. We can check this checkbox, we can uncheck these checkboxes. Okay, so next is the input type color. So what input type color does is, so input type color just loads the color panel. So we will now have a color panel where we can select like multiple colors. So basically input type color loads the color panel. Next is the input type date. So input type date loads the date. So basically we have a date picker, and from here we can select multiple dates. Okay. Next comes the input type date time local. So basically what date time local will do, it will load the date as well as the time. So basically we have date, then we can select a time as well. So if we do like input type date time local, we can set the date and time as well. So input type date will load a date, and input type date time local will load a date time local field. Next is the email. So basically input type email loads an email. So basically if we want some website that should ask for the email, then we use an input type email. For example, if we use the Tutorix website, in the login page, okay, so Nandita, we were discussing like input type email. So basically input type email loads the loads the field that contains the email. So for example, we were discussing about Tutorix website. So if we open the tutorix.com and it says login, so here it's the email. So if so the beauty about the email tag is that if we add something that is not an email type, and if we try to log in, we will get an error, please include an @ in the email address. So basically input type email gives the validation. Okay guys, next is the input type file. So basically the use of input type file is, it kind of, it is used to upload the file as an image or a document or PDF or any sort of file. So if we try to execute this input type file, sorry, if we try to execute this input type file, then it will give up a file from where we can kind of choose the relevant file. So this is what input type file does. Next is the input type hidden. So basically what input type hidden does is, it just, so we are getting blank, but there is an input type and that is hidden. So there is an input type, but we cannot see it. So for some input types that are hidden, we see input type blank. So if you can see the code here in this website, we have one input type that is hidden. Means there is an input type, but that is not seen to us. It's like a hidden input type. Next is the input type image. So guys, it's an important thing. What input type image does is, input type image is a, it makes a button with a specific image. So let's suppose we don't want to load a normal button, we want to load an image using a button. Okay, so basically for this we can use input type image, and we can give it a source, and we can give some image path. So for example, we can copy its image path, uh, copy image address, and so so what it will do is, if we execute this, then it has kind of load up a button. Okay, so we can use this as a simple button. We can just put up an on click and call a JavaScript here, on click my fun. So basically we can load a script tag, and we can define a function my fun, and in this we can load up an alert. Mm, this is a test form. So basically we can use it as a button. So this is what input type image does. Next comes the input type month. Input, so basically if you would have listened to it, then input type date loads a date picker where we can select a date. Then input type date time local will load a date picker as well as the time picker. Then comes the input type month. What input type month will does is, input type month will load a month picker. So basically input type month will load a month picker. So now from here we can choose any month. Okay, next comes the input type number. So if we do input type number, input type number will get a number picker where, sorry, number text box where I cannot enter the alphabets. I am typing the alphabets but I am unable to enter it. But if I enter like numbers, then it will it will be entered. Also input type number has a step up and step down button. So we can step up the numbers, we can step down the numbers. So basically this is what input type number does. Okay, next we have input type password. So input type password just returns the text in the encrypted form with the dots. This is what input type password does. Next is the input type radio. Guys, listen to this. This is a bit important. Okay, so basically we can have input type radio that will make a radio button. So let's suppose we can again go to gender. We can have a label called gender, and we can have a radio button male. and then we can have another radio button, female. So now you can see the two radio buttons are there. But the thing is, we can check both the radio buttons, which should not be the case because person can be a male or a female. So to make this, what we can do is we can give both these radio buttons name attribute which is same. So we can give it like my gender, and we can give it a name again, my gender. So basically it's like male, female. Now you can either select male or you can select female. If you give like two different names, like one is my gender and second is my gen, if you give like different names, then you can select both the radio buttons. But if you give like same name, then you can select either of the one. Nandita, any doubt till now? Okay. Next comes the input type range. So basically what input type range does is, input type range loads the range. So it loads something like this range where we can mm, do a minimum, then we can do maximum, and it's like a lever that we can like decrease or increase. So this is what input type range does. Next comes the input type reset. Input type reset makes a reset button. So let's suppose we give it here input type reset, and we have like a text box, input type text, then we have a input type, we can have like number, and we can have a text area. So if we just look here, then we select something, we wrote something in the text box, we wrote some number in the number box, we wrote some description in the text area. So so now the thing is, if we just click on reset button, one second, input type reset. So basically, if we just click on the reset, one second, uh, input type reset, we have to do a form in it. So we have to include everything in the form, then only it will reset. So basically we entered some text, we entered some alphabet, we entered some description, and if we click on reset, then everything resets. So this is what input type reset does. Next is the input type search. Input type search is like similar to the input type text, with just a difference that we get a cross mark. Okay, so if we do something like input type search, input type search, yes, okay, yes, yes. Mm, yes, yes, of course, of course, yes, yes. So basically we will be covering up the topics like HTML, CSS, JavaScript, jQuery, Bootstrap for responsiveness. Then we will go to advanced, that will have frameworks like Angular, React, and Vue. These all will be covered in the 4 months duration. Of course, yes, of course. Those topics are the part of CSS, and they will certainly be covered. Media queries, max width, min width, media screen, media print, everything will be covered as a part of CSS. Okay, so basically, in the HTML, we will be covering a basic HTML. Let me let me open the. So as of now, we have like created the PPT for the HTML. So let me show you this. So we will cover up the block and inline elements, headings, paragraphs, formatting. Then we will be covering up comments, pre, lists, links, list as well. Then we will be covering up images. Then we will be covering up favicons and tables, lists, and thereafter we will be covering up iframe, JavaScript, how to call JavaScript in HTML, then file paths, forms, and thereafter we will be covering up something like I'm sorry, we will be covering up something like um l- let me open the part 4. Then we will be covering up something like canvases and the SVGs. So, and also we will be covering up media elements like video and audio. So basically these all things we will be covering, and then in the CSS we will be covering up basic CSS, then we will be covering up animations, and then we will be covering up box model, and then we will be covering up a flex box, and we will have a basics about SCSS as well. And in JavaScript we will be covering up anything that is related to ES6. Then we can have everything related to the questions that are asked in the interviews. Then we will have Angular. There we will be covering up basic Angular setups, interceptors, decorators, and services, HTTP services. Then we will be covering up subjects like behavior subjects, then replace subjects, and coming towards the React lifecycle hooks. Then we will have React basic React setups. Then again subjects and everything in the React. Hence, same applies in the Vue as well. Thereafter, we will learn up some version control technologies like GitHub, some version control softwares like GitHub and Git, and also we will be learning a basics of deployment like CI/CD pipeline. These all we will be covering. Of course, of course, we will be making up projects like YouTube clone, where we will be kind of making up a real YouTube website with 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 the live APIs that are given by YouTube. We will be making up a website similar to clone that will kind of search, for example, um, if we again open like youtube.com, sorry, the tutorlix.com, we have one tutorlix YouTube. So this is calling up y- the YouTube API. Here we can also search for a specific video, like we search for Naruto, and it has loaded all the YouTube videos. So this is calling up the YouTube APIs. So we will be using up that YouTube APIs, and we will be making up a website that is similar to YouTube clone. Then we will make an e-commerce website as well. So that will be a proper e-commerce website. Mm, So we will be doing these projects as well. So yes, Photoshop and Figma, these these won't be covered as a part of front end development, but certainly if there will be requirement, then we can have a separate course module regarding that. Okay, so anything else you would like to ask? Okay, so I guess that's all from our side. um, if you would certainly like the class, then you can of course join the class. Otherwise you can give the reviews on our website. So I guess that's all. Thank you. Okay then. Bye. Thank you.